Did you know that by 2030, passenger traffic is projected to exceed a staggering 12 billion passengers annually?
Wow, that's a lot of McDonald's, right?
It's not where I was going, but what this means is a huge amount of growth coming from the airport sector. A lot of this growth is coming from Asia. And so today we're here to talk about Cisco's point of view about this huge growth that's expected in our airports and how digital infrastructure is at the core of this transformation. We know that Cisco powers some of the world's largest and best airports, so we are deeply embedded in the aviation ecosystem. But we have a unique point of view as a digital infrastructure technology provider. And so we want to deep dive into our Ascend framework today and have a little bit of a chat about the emerging technology trends we're seeing for aviation in the next 5 to 10 years and beyond. So first and foremost, I think it's appropriate we do some introductions. Who are we and why are we here talking about airports of the future? So my name's Sarah. I am a business transformation lead covering ASEAN or Southeast Asia. I work for Cisco Systems in Singapore, and I've been at Cisco for about 8 years now.
Interesting.
Okay. Your turn.
So I'm Avinash. I'm a business transformation architect at Cisco. I've been in Cisco for close to 14 years, and I'm based out of Singapore. And yeah, I love Cisco. I love the way it functions.
Thank you, Avinash. But let's get down to the business of the day, which is to talk about airports and modern airports. So I think we want to take this conversation down a little bit of a journey. And I think a nice place to start is based on our own experiences of airports and aviation. So I'd like you to cast your memory back to a really, really good airport experience. What was it? What did it look like? How did it make you feel?
Far, far away in a galaxy. No. Okay, so I think ironically, my best airport experience was one in which I almost missed my flight.
Oh.
Yeah. And I want to call this out specifically because this was here at Changi, right, at Singapore. You reach a point where you're like, you take things for granted unless you really feel that it's actually happening. So that's when, when you go and do the self-check-in and then you put your bag inside the check-in and then your immigration is like 5 seconds. And I literally had 15 minutes to have food and I made it to the boarding gate to stand in that line, which was my boarding group, to say, yes, I stood in the line on time. I'm not late.
You felt really proud,
did you? That was good. And that's when I kind of realized that, there are certain things that we take for granted, which is kind of a big deal for a lot of airports, which is the experience. And this was an eye opener for me. Like, there are so many things that happens in the back end and that we just don't know what it is. And I was like really there. It's a core memory for me. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But I mean, what about you? Like,
I think for me, I'm all about the experience. If we can nail that end-to-end experience, a series of connected kind of moments and when you're traveling, if any of those experiences don't quite hit the mark or are not quite meeting expectations, then the whole journey can sometimes be a little disappointing, right? But when an experience is really executed well, that's what you remember, that's what you take away. And I think about things that are game-changing, passportless travel, simple things like an application that tells you where you need to be and how long it's going to take you to get there. Food kiosks that make eating that meal easy, seamless. I can pay in whatever currency I want to pay. Things like I want to wayfind easily. How long is it going to be till I get to my boarding gate, etc. And I also really care about efficiency. I mean, I know everyone does, but I think when you can take some of that planning up front and you can manage it up front, I think that's super helpful. And when you can minimize the actual effort that you have to do on the ground. Things like biometrics, just streamlining that experience. And if you ever traveled on an international long-haul flight with 2 young children solo, there is no room for error.
I can imagine.
That is a well-oiled machine. So I'm looking at this as an efficient process.
I mean, if you think about this now, you mentioned a lot of things about experience, right? And I mean, experience clearly is the main focus. But a lot of airports are doing this already, we know there are a lot of airports like Changi, Copenhagen. These are segments they're already doing it right now. So what needs to change? Like, why would they need to do anything? Like, why would they want to go on for a transformation? Like, what's the goal here? Is there something beyond experience that you're looking at?
Yeah, no, that's a valid question. I think the honest truth is we don't know what we don't know, right? And to handle the kind of volume that we're seeing coming in the next, I guess, 5 to 10 years, we can't just kind of tinker around the edges. We really have to look at a full kind of embracing a transformational change. And that pace of change is also so fast that if you're not looking 5, 10, 15 years down the road, then effectively you're just planning for your own obsolescence. And I think that is a big risk out there. So we need to build infrastructure that can adapt to emerging technologies, right? It's poised, it's ready. And also unforeseen threats or challenges that we may not even be aware of now. So yeah, I want to be clear. Like, this is not just about tech evangelism, not just kind of flying the flag for every new gadget. It has to be meaningful change, but it's got to be transformative and it has to be done in a really deliberate way, which means change management. It means upskilling people, upskilling systems, and looking at things more holistically rather than kind of necessarily point-to-point solutions, but looking at the platform approach. I think that's really critical. And so we're not taking uneducated guesses and risks. We're actually strategically making decisions about how to best get what we need from the technology. Yeah. So let's take this kind of one step further, this kind of transformational piece. And let's use AI as an example. It's a really good one because there's a lot of parallels, right? So we're seeing AI embedded in everything from phones, obviously across the airport as well. And there's a few challenges with AI that kind of generally known. One is around kind of this trust barrier, which we won't go into, but the other one is around organizations who are trying to layer like kind of 2026 technology on like a 2018 mindset. And you can't just plug AI onto existing infrastructure and expect it to transform and kind of open up all these opportunities, right? So I think AI is powerful. It's a little bit invisible. And there is a little bit of a hesitancy with AI, from it stealing our jobs to kind of how do we actually make it work for our organization. So yeah, there's a few, I guess, nice building blocks here. But from your perspective, Avinash, where do you see AI being best utilized in airports? And do you think the adoption in airports is consistent with kind of the rest of the industry or the rest of kind of other verticals?
I think it's an interesting point you mentioned that it's invisible. Like I was able to draw a parallel to networks because I've been in networking for quite some time. And I feel that it's very similar to networks because as an end user, you don't see the network doing its job. Like you're just enjoying the experience. You're enjoying super fast, booking times and your lounges and everything, right? And like I said, when I went and I got access, my immigration was in 5 seconds. But I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that happened there at the back end with the network. So the AI part is similar to the network. It's hiding there in plain sight. We don't see it, but there are use cases out there which a lot of airports are exploring now. For example, a couple of airports are looking at image recognition for the planes when they're at the gate. So how fast, what are the different kinds of processes? What are the people? What are the different activities that people are doing from chocks on to chocks off, right? Is there a way we can optimize that? And that's where, something which a human eye cannot see, the AI can capture. That's one of the use cases that we're seeing. And that's just one aspect of operations, airport operations. But airports are sitting on like huge dump of data, right? And we are looking at stuff like, can we use that data to kind of help maybe elderly navigate to their gates, to find each other across different phones, different locations based on phones, right? And there are use cases there which AI can really help. And another big one that I see is within advertisements, hyper personalized advertisements, and retail is another example where you've got McDonald's coming in. What if McDonald's wants to change or introduce a new product? What kind of business intelligence do they need to put in? Mm-hmm. Airports can get that data, but the point now is there's a lot of are we going to give that data? That's where we're kind of at that inflection point. Like, it's potentially a problem there.
It's a good segue, because I think what we've looked at is that we know data is super critical, right? And you can't really do AI without data. So I know, I imagine on the airport scale, it is as critical and it is as pervasive. So I think the other thing around data is you creating good structures and good classifications and good management of that data. So, for like when you're dealing with 12 billion passengers globally, there's huge amounts of data. You can't just kind of throw more servers at the problem and hope for the best. So I guess I want to talk a little bit about data, its importance, and how we're looking at data as airports modernize over the next 5 to 10 years.
So it's interesting you brought that up, because it brings me back to that imagery that you positioned, which was, you want to put a 2026, 2030 concept in a 1990s segment, because at some point before AI came into the picture, it was there. Data was there, but it was considered like an asset, like, secure asset. No one touches it. Mm-hmm. We don't want this to be compromised, which is true to an extent. Mm-hmm. That's the crown jewels, right? But today, if you need to do anything beyond your existing capabilities, if, like, for example, if you want to build business intelligence, like we were talking about, you need them to talk to each other. You need data exchange, right? Mm-hmm. And again, ironically, most airports today, they are extremely siloed, and the exchange happens in a very fixed, rigorous segmentation aspect. Like, I need it segmented. Data doesn't exchange unless there's specific requirement. Again, in the 1990s, 2000s, fair enough. But today we need that exchange, right? We need data to move across different segments. And this then leads to a lot of different angles, right? So, for example, would an airport be comfortable having segments talking to each other with a certain level of security? Would they consider putting in data lakes so that no one talks to each other, but everyone talks to the data lake? Different trains of thought there. And we've got different feedback from different airports as well. And there's a lot of concepts that go in there. But I also want to touch something here, which we may not have, really talked about, but it's there. That's the real elephant in the room.
Can you please explain PQC?
So, PQC is essentially post-quantum cryptography. So to kind of simplify it, all our data is stored, secured, encrypted. So when it's transmitting across to each other, it's encrypted, right? So now there are certain types of computers that are out. Quantum computers. Wow. Yay, science. So there are quantum computers out there which can now decrypt some of these, this data. And that's kind of where like stuff like Shor's algorithm comes into the picture, and people are kind of like, you've built computers which can decrypt this data. How secure are we? Like, if our main encryption algorithms are decryptable. So that's the big one. So even outside of AI and data, now we know that data is primarily important to make sure AI functions well. But now you need to secure that data, and now there are means to actually decrypt that data. And that kind of becomes a very important aspect for airports, because what do they process? They process sensitive data. They process schedules. They process airline information, payment information, right? So there's a lot of stuff that they're processing, and that's kind of when the engagements and the concepts which the airport needs to look at elevates beyond just a network conversation or just a compute conversation. It goes beyond. It goes to a strategy where I want to change the way that I approach airport transformation. I want to change the way that I'm looking at protecting my data. It's not just about segments. It's about enabling with the right security. And I like to play devil's advocate all the time. It's just me, because I like security. So let's assume this is in place and everything's fine and dandy. We build an architecture, but it's so complex, don't you think? Like there's so many complexities and operational challenges with really operationalizing some of these segments, like some of these aspects of how do you connect security to operations? How do you connect operations? I've been in the security industry for a long time, so I have zero trust. I mean, looking at all these complexities, operational challenges, you start thinking like, how would someone start positioning something like a huge transformation in an airport? Like, does it really? How would one do that? Like, I don't know. I don't see a path there. What do you think?
So I think this is something that the industry is grappling with holistically. How do you focus on modernization and transformation whilst also running the business of the day, right? In building the Ascend framework, it's really about creating an approachable, digestible, whatever word you want to use, a framework that will support the business side of airport owners and airport operators, and also the boots on the ground side. So you're creating a framework, a schematic to help guide airport stakeholders through this complex transformation and looking at all of the parts that are required for such a large modernization. And we tried to create a level of streamline and simplicity when looking at the kind of investment needed. So this is a good segue to introduce Cisco's Ascend framework, part of the Modernizing Airports Blueprint, that the white paper that has been published. So the Ascend framework effectively it's a North Star around digital air infrastructure for airports. It provides a kind of structured guide to organizations to help manage and kind of unpack that complexity. It's also describing the kind of the end-to-end digital infrastructure capability that one would need to modernize an airport. And when we talk about this, it's greenfield, it's new airports, it's older airports who are looking to upgrade their legacy infrastructure, and it's also airport expansions. It takes quite a broad approach. But the best way to look at the Ascend framework is as a resource to support the entire airport ecosystem. And it provides a point of view on kind of how you bridge that vision to the actual business outcomes. And the Ascend framework and the white paper is very deliberate in tying this back to business outcomes, because at the end of the day, this is a business. So airport stakeholders can explore the emerging technology, these innovations, but also ensure that the boring parts or the less cool innovations are also taken care of, making sure operations are smooth, simple, efficient, automated. And that security piece that you mentioned is baked in from day one, not an afterthought.
Indeed.
So we, want to explore the Ascend framework a little bit deeper today. And I think the way we could do this is by giving you some time to unpack this.
Okay.
How does that sound?
Right. How much time though?
I'm going to give you...
I can talk all day.
I'm going to give you 4 minutes. What do you think? Doable?
It's a challenge, but I like challenges, so let's do it.
So I'm going to give Avinash 4 minutes to dive deeper into the Ascend framework. He does like to talk. We know this.
I do.
And when he gets talking on particularly security and technology, we get into the weeds. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to act as a bit of a gatekeeper, timekeeper, keep him on track. But this is a really important conversation. And I think the pillars of the Ascend framework, we need to do them justice.
All right.
So I think over to you. Let's hear about the Ascend framework.
To begin with, I just want to bring in that the reason we have 5 pillars here is essentially because there are, like what Sarah mentioned initially, there are piecemeal segments that we go after. And that's the logic, that's the background we want to keep in mind when we're looking at these 5 pillars. So the first pillar here is secure AI-ready availability zones. And the way I approach this is when you're looking at improving something, you want to start thinking as, what do you want to improve? What do you want to protect? What do you want to enhance? What's in it for you? And for an airport, like we spoke about, that something is data, customer data, payment data, airlines data. So all of these segments must be available, readily available. When someone wants to book a ticket, they need to be able to access their segments, their payment. They need to be accessed their schedules. So you need to have a concept where if one part of your compute or data center infrastructure breaks, it's still available. Availability zone, right? And we want it to be available. So that's where stuff like resiliency comes in. It's no longer just about maintaining applications. It's about resiliency of those applications. And it's about hosting them in a resilient manner, giving them the right access control. If you look at the term that we've used, it's availability zone. Because in nature as well, there's an ecosystem that's built where it sustains itself. You need to be able to manage within that ecosystem, everything that's within it, so that if there's a problem, you can just shift.
Yeah,
it's just as simple as that, and that's where concepts like digital twinning comes into the picture. It's a North Star that a lot of airports are following up as well.
Okay. So I'm hearing you correctly. The kind of ways we'd see the availability zones turning up or showing up in airports would be around things like AI-driven kind of passenger flows or real-time gate changes, passenger notifications on airport applications, things like that. Is that?
Yeah, and how do I make them resilient so that the end user doesn't feel the disruption? That's kind of where it is. The next one here is, again, secure, high-speed resilient networks. And secure is going to be there because we want it to be baked in, right? But this is the networking part. This is the circulatory system of the airport.
Yep.
Like we're talking about applications talking to each other. We're talking about, servers accessing stuff from different servers, clients, mobile phones accessing data. We need the communication to support the business.
Yep.
Communication, you're just two separate isolated systems. And that's kind of what we want to do with an airport as well. You have a lot of systems talking to each other. We need resiliency in the communication.
So use cases, examples for an airport, pervasive, fast Wi-Fi. So updates to flight information, and even things kind of, I guess, in the belly of the airport, like airport baggage handling systems or biometric systems. All of those systems rely on a secure and reliable network.
I would actually extend it even to a couple of other segments. For example, communication on the air side.
Yep.
How do we make sure that the equipment there is ready for communication under any circumstance, whether it's raining or snowing?
Yep.
We should be able to make sure that when the plane is landing, there's communication happening, right? And the other aspect is the AI aspect. So you mentioned that AI is something which is coming up, and we know airports are looking at it deeply. If an airport really wants to go down this path and build its own data center, AI data center, the network there needs to have a specific requirement. It has a specific requirement with what AI systems require. And that's not the same as how it is in the normal traditional networking or in the backbone. So AI has a big play there, and networks need to support that AI infrastructure as well.
And I think the network is so critical in that so many of the things we experience as passengers relies on that network's performance.
The next one is cyber resilience. And there's a reason I call it cyber resilience and not cybersecurity, because cybersecurity is kind of focusing on security, but resilience from a cyber angle is what's driving most airports today. And there are situations, and airports have a lot of data which people want. They want to access data that can disrupt airlines. The state-driven actors which can potentially want to cause problems. And we want to make sure that whatever the airport does and however the airport designs its architecture is secure by design. That's why all our pillars have secure already in it, but this is kind of looking at the bigger enterprise security architecture, making sure frameworks like Zero Trust are in place, and any kind of information extraction is driven by requirements versus blind trust.
Okay. So in the airport scenario, you've kind of alluded to a few of those examples, use cases. It's protecting flight data, passenger data, but also the kind of critical ops data. It's about ensuring passenger information is secure. And I guess just basically ensuring that the operations of the airport can run smoothly without interruption, and that those physical and cyber security risks are managed.
Right.
Kind of.
And I mean, again, it goes down to experience.
Yeah.
Like the end user must not reach a point where some of my data is compromised. Now I have lost my trust in the airport. That's fundamentally what an airport wants to build. Make sure that you trust them enough to come there again.
Yep.
Right.
And that those planes can take off as scheduled. You know, that the businesses run smoothly.
Correct.
Yep.
All right. So the next one here is contextual observability. And this is a personal favorite because I coined the term here, you cannot protect what you cannot see. And
Did you coin that?
I did. I use it everywhere. And the reason it really drives the point home is because fundamentally it's complementary to cyber resilience, right?
Yep.
It's complementary. If you can see what you want to protect, if you know exactly what your assets are, you have put the right security controls, you have put the right resiliency controls. And that's kind of where observability as a concept versus visibility comes into the picture. So you don't want to just see, you want to observe, you want to correlate. And that's, again, where AI comes into the picture. Can we use AI to correlate some of the various disparate data and then, make a story of this is what's happening in my environment and then preemptively stop something from happening? Like, for example, if we know that there are potential issues, there are certain segments in the airport which are getting crowded. How do I correlate that with I need to I need to do something about it? How do I get there? So that's kind of where observability comes in. And it's not specifically for security. It's across the board, right? That's the best part. And it needs to get logs and all kinds of data from everywhere, wireless, your networks, baggage management systems, airport traffic centers, everywhere. There has to be a way to kind of correlate it.
And I think that comes back to that correlation of data, having the observability capability means that those passenger experiences are going to be seamless, so that we can preemptively and kind of manage any of those roadblocks that may appear. And we can ensure that at every stage of the journey, that handoff is seamless, and that we know what our potential risks are, but we're ready for any unplanned risks as well. So I think, observability is something, again, almost another hidden hero in terms of its role in critical kind of technology infrastructure. But I think certainly something that is key to a modern kind of digital airport.
And finally, we come to AI-driven operations. So, operations is extremely critical in an airport, and we've got unsung heroes working beyond the clock, supporting the airport systems. And we know that that's a potential concern where you have so many complex processes running in an airport, and you have lesser people to kind of manage it. And this is where the agentic AI part comes into the picture, right? So, we're not looking at just ML models, which are kind of just looking at data and doing stuff, right? We are looking at agents. Can we get certain limited or low critical processes? Can we get agents to do it? Once we get the agents to do it, can we then start making sure that they are trustworthy? And there are many angles that go into it, but it makes it much simpler for operators to start focusing on really critical problems. Because what we're seeing now as well in the industry is there are so many problems there and they're looking at so many things at a time, and it kind of becomes really difficult to manage some of that. And so we operations wise, AI is kind of obviously driving your processes, and which is again why you need to make sure that based on your use case, you've got the right infrastructure in place, the right network in place, and the right security in place.
Okay. And again, I mentioned a lot of those important use cases. I think one of the ones that shows up for me here is around dynamic and adaptability, being able to make decisions faster, right? So weather patterns or, again, unexpected changes in circumstances, that scheduling can be dynamic because you've got that agentic capability that's looking out for things. We've got a little more eyes on the ground now through that capability. The other way, again, all the IoT, so airside, but also too in the airport and the terminal side too, supporting the operations of running an airport, all the corporate staffing, the teams, the administrating, all those networks that run, again, the business of the airport too, are all going to be supported by these AI operations and capabilities that are going to give them more time and greater throughput, greater productivity, which will, overall, I guess, enhance the performance of the airport.
And just to kind of top that off, AI today, the simplest way to insert AI into anything is a process. right? You find a process, if it's automated to some extent, all you need to do is look at what kind of intelligence are you looking for as an enhancement and then put it in. What's the imperative for airports here? Like how do they operationalize this? What do they do?
Good question. This comes directly back to what I mentioned before, tying those priorities, those business priorities with the technology capabilities, ensuring that there is a deep alignment there. So there are kind of 3 priorities or imperatives that we look at to wrap up the Ascend framework. One of them is around driving revenue growth. It is important for all airports across the globe to have consistent and new revenue streams and being able to maximize or optimize those revenue streams, right, consistently. So balancing the aviation and non-aviation income for an airport, and also be able to capture that scale and deliver the returns on the investments, right? So driving revenue growth is really important. The second one is business continuity. And we have talked a lot about this today in different formats, but ensuring that the business can run. There is, a zero trust kind of philosophy adopted by airport operators to ensure that the airport is secure by design from day one. It's built into all the systems natively. So we want to be able to protect against those cybersecurity threats that we mentioned, and also just ensure that the business is available and the business is performing, right? So your passengers can have those incredible experiences. The business can stay open regardless of what's happening externally. Right. And the third, which we have touched on already a little bit, is operational efficiency. Just making sure that we're utilizing agentic AI and those digital assets are automated and that we are giving them the investment that we're making in the digital assets allows and supports the business to grow and to meet the demands. So we want to create kind of a smarter environment for our airport operators. We want to be think resiliency and profitability all kind of wrapped into one. So these are the big, drivers for the change. And this is how we contextualize the Ascend framework to make sure that it is directly delivering on passenger experience and directly achieving business outcomes of running an airport.
And this is just the beginning, if you think about it, because Cisco actually has the innovation and the technological capability and skill set to really do this. And I honestly feel that this kind of digital transformation is really what's going to enable that growth. Mm-hmm. And this part is what we've kind of focused on when we have written our white paper. The link will be in the description provided. We're looking at a blog series for airports where we're going to start detailing each of these pillars, because I'm sure everyone's going to be like, okay, let's go inside each of these technologies and show me what Cisco's got. And we've also got potential podcasts coming up explaining some of these pillars as well, looking at what we can do and how we position it for different airports. So a lot of exciting stuff coming in, and I'm super excited. But one thing that really touched home here is the way we got to work together as sales and customer experience. So Sarah coming from a business angle from a sales experience, and me coming from a technology angle from the architecture experience. I feel that it has given that sweet spot to this kind of engagement for airports, where we're really looking at marrying the business requirements to something that technology can really do. And Cisco has that bandwidth to really go far across all of these pillars, and that's kind of why it's imperative that, we start exploring some of these segments for digital transformation. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a great partnership. And I think we have looked after our estate well and represented the kind of needs of our businesses. So I think it's been great. And I think a few closing sentiments from myself. We've come on a journey to build out the blueprint and worked on developing this Ascend framework. I think at the moment, to summarize some of the conversation today, we are at a bit of an inflection point. I know that's quite a used phrase at the moment, but I think it's quite important. Airports have evolved from being kind of these simple transit hubs into these digital ecosystems. it's now kind of part luxury retail, it's part experiential services centres. And so we have the duty now to deliver technology and capability that matches all that an airport needs to be. I think also airports are huge economic engines for countries and cities, and they drive a huge amount of growth and economic income. So that evolution, the scale puts a lot of pressure on the people behind the scenes who are running the airports. So operators are now tasked with this mammoth exercise in managing this living digital infrastructure that requires 100% availability, highly secure, that's looking at what's over the horizon in terms of technology. And it's a huge role that they have to carry. So at the end of the day, it is a huge challenge, but I think it's actually an incredible opportunity. And the Ascend framework, if nothing else, can provide a little bit of clarity and a bit of a structure as to how airports can help manage this technological shift and modernize in a deliberate and structured way. Then hopefully that's our job done. This is a really exciting space to be in. And I feel really privileged that we get to be having conversations around enabling airports and aviation with really critical digital infrastructure.
But all of the stuff that you just said, did you describe an airport or an amusement park?
And with that final note, thank you. Thanks, Avinash.
Stay tuned. Reach out for more. Until the next one.